that there are other possibilities concerning that particular scripture. And that's the way Yeshua works. That's the way Yahweh works. And I'll throw that up there in just a second. These things have I written unto you that believe on the name of the Son of God, that ye may No. It's not an echo, but it's pretty direct. We must know. We must believe with certainty. And Yahweh, basically everything involved in the plan of redemption becomes an atonement. Now, what do I mean by that? You got the priest and the lamb, the human offering, the divine offering, the altar sacrifice, the most holy, Lion of Judah, lawyer advocate. You got the coming king, the coming judge. Atonement. What is secreted below Golgotha facilitated the marriage of the law and the blood. Break it down. You have to have at least two things to have at one meant. To have at one meant, you have to have at least two things coming together, don't you? And that's what we see demonstrated over and over and over again. Two components of the covenant promise. The law, the blood, both absolutely necessary. The law is given to His chosen people at Sinai. They're carrying it around for a long time. Is added. But God gives them a service, a tabernacle service, a sanctuary service, to remind them that the real is coming. We're talking about a marriage, right? And sometimes when we think of a marriage in the Western culture, I've seen marriages in 5 minutes. But in the Midwestern culture, it may be years. Because there's a contract signed, promises are made, right? Time goes by, different things have to occur. Then you have to have all kind of ceremony and a coming together. And then you have to have, of course, the marriage. Then you have to have a celebration after. When Jacob wanted to marry Rachel, what was the contract set for? 7 years. Okay, ultimately it ended up being 14, but he got 2, didn't he? He ended up with 2. But they were 7-year contracts. I think that Yahweh has a 7-year contract with us. And when I say 7-year, I mean 7,000-year contract. I think that's very symbolic of what our planet has. If the Father truly loved us and wanted to save us, this marriage was a legal requirement. A perfect human offering would be necessary. Also, an eternal offering would be necessary. An eternal presence to atone for the transgression of an eternal law. And actually, building blocks of God's foundation of truth. And we've just added one that is so significant, one of the atonement, which is what the sanctuary points to, a true understanding of the atonement, complete understanding of the atonement. Now let's go back. Let's go back and follow some of Ron's experience that he had in working and in digging in the garden tomb. He has that miraculous experience, goes home, studies it out, figures out that the ark could possibly be in that area. Begins his excavation, begins digging around. He ends up hiring he hires a young Arab man to help him. And, of course, others as well go and help from time to time. But this man lives close by, and so he's there. When Ron is there, he's there with him all the time. In December of 19 He digs for a couple of years, and in December of 1981, this young man is working with him. His two sons, Danny and Ronnie, have been there working with him. But when you're down there in the cave systems and the tunnels scurrying around, for those of you that have been spelunking before, you know it can get damp. And his two boys ended up getting sick. And it's just before the holidays, and so they want to go home. And so they fly home in December of 1981. When they get home, a friend of Ron's who lives in the area finds out that Ron is possibly over there by himself. He hops on a plane and he shoots on over there. And he gets there sometime right after the first of the year. And when he gets there, he's delighted to see that this young Arab young man is working with him, etc. He wasn't there by himself. And so the three of them now are working in this tunnel system. And a lot of it's not very glorious and spectacular because you're just moving debris. You're shoveling debris, you're moving it out, you've got to scan it, you've got to put it through a screen to check for any artifacts and so forth. And so it's a lot of laborious type of things that have to take place. You're working sometimes with a jackhammer, etc. So it can get noisy, it can get dusty, it can get dirty. But Ron is determined because God has directed him. And so as they're digging along, they open up different tunnel systems, and when they chisel a hole in the wall, Ron would chisel a small opening. And because this young Arab man was slender, he could squeeze through some of these small openings. Check out these chambers. And it's just like a honeycomb, the cliff face is. And so he'd squeeze in, he'd look around, he'd say, nothing in here. And then they'd go down a little further and do it all over again. And the other fellow, that was there, he'd just be moving debris, carrying debris, trying to keep the tunnel system cleared out. So eventually, they come to this one place where there's an opening, and there was also a stalactite that was hanging down in front of it. Ron's take on it was that it was like it was guarding the opening. Okay? And so he went over there and he kind of pulled that stalactite off, and he made the hole a little bit bigger, and this young man squeezed on through. Ron's, standing out by the opening, standing outside in the tunnel system. And all of a sudden, this young man comes bolting back through the hole, hollering, excited, saying, "What's in there? What is in there? What's in there?"
That's what he was saying.
That's what the young man was saying. And he starts taking off. I gotta get out of here. And he starts making his way through the tunnel. And that's something you really don't want to do because, man, you can get hurt. You got to, in a tunnel system like that, in an excavation like that, you've got to be careful. And sometimes it can get slippery. But this young man is taking off. And Ron's perplexed. He's standing there. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know whether to run, whether to sit there, start praying. He don't know what's going on. This young man comes up through the tunnel system, and he runs into Wilbur Bishop, who's the friend that had come over from Tennessee. And Wilbur can also see, as he sees this young man coming, that he's agitated. He's very upset. He's scared to death. And so he's trying to get some information out of him, Wilbur is. What are you doing here? Is everything okay? Is Ron okay? What's going on? I got to get out of here. And so Wilbur thinks, oh man, something's happened. So he hurriedly goes back to where he finds Ron standing there at that opening. And they shine their torches, their flashlights through the opening, and they start to see little glimmers, little sparkles, things that are shining. And they look in there and they can see there's rocks there's rotten boards, there's deteriorating skins that are covering things over. And they know. They know that that's where the sanctuary furniture had been hidden for several years. So Ron, Wilbur says to Ron, he says, look, he says, you're too big to go through here. He said, but if we make this just a little bit bigger, I can squeeze through. And Ron says, oh, no. He says, He says, if you go in there and something happens, he says, I can't help you. He says, I really don't want you to do that. And so they decided that they were just going to leave, and Ron decided he was going to eventually notify the authorities. But Ron comes back the next day. Wilbur has to go home on his Apex ticket flight. He has to go home the next day. But Ron comes back. And Ron makes the hole bigger, and he crawls in. He crawls in there, and of course, it's a cave system, and it's full of stuff. And he has to just try to weed his way through the rock, the loose rock and so forth. And it's just a little bit of space to move around in there. It's kind of packed in there. But he does notice, I think he makes out the table of showbread, kind of knows that that's definitely there. And he sees toward the back, kind of nestled into a corner where the ceiling comes down lower, he sees a stone case. And he believes that the ark is in that stone case. And he gets a little closer, and what he notices is that there's only about that much room from the top of the lid to the top of the ceiling, so you can't put your head up and look over. Okay? But what he notices up on the ceiling there, a dark substance and a crack in the ceiling, in a dark substance. And he begins to put two and two together. And he begins to realize that, oh, wait a minute, the crucifixion site is up there somewhere. Oh, wow. The blood of Yeshua came down through this crack and went on to the mercy seat. And he passes out. Once that thought comes to his mind, he passes out. Now he's not, actually he was also getting sick from having been there for quite a while. So he's in a little bit of a weakened condition. But once he realized that, he passed out. And he had passed out for, from what I can remember, he was out for about 45 minutes before he came to. And he came to, and he realized that he wasn't going to be able to do much in there that day, so he goes out and he notifies the authorities of what he's found. And then begins several years of the most incredible insight and communication you can imagine. He ends up eventually meeting the angels that protect the ark in that chamber. He takes some of what turns out to be a blood sample. He gets a sample of that blood. And he's working with a fellow from the Department of Antiquities, and this is real hush-hush. Because truly, the Department of Antiquities, they have no clue what to do in this situation. Because here this stuff sits in the Arab quarter, and they don't want them to get their hands on it, and they can't get it out of there. And I don't know if Ron ever really told them, look, it's protected. If God doesn't want you to touch it, if God doesn't want you to have it, don't bother. But of course, they sent 6 of their people in there anyway, as I mentioned earlier. Ron goes in there one day. He was in that chamber numerous times. One time he goes in there, and it's like house cleaning had showed up. All the rock is gone. The boards are gone. The skins are gone. And all that's in there is just the furniture, sanctuary furniture. And he said there's The table of showbread is there, the menorah is there, the table of incense. Of course, the ark in the stone case is there. There are several little implements, shovels, lamps, different things like that. He said also there's a huge sword in there. Whose sword would that be? Goliath's sword. Yeah, I believe so. He brought some things out, some lamps and different things to show to the Department of Antiquities. He brought out a little pomegranate from digging through the tunnel system down there. He got a little pomegranate caught in his pant leg, and he brought that out. According to the Israeli authorities, that is the only artifact known to exist from the first temple, period. And it's kind of interesting because every year they say it's authentic, and then somebody else looks at it and says it's not, then somebody else looks at it and says it's authentic, somebody says it's not. So they go back and forth and whatnot. I'm not even sure what the current thinking is, but I know that Ron found it down there, brought it out, and gave it to them. They made up another story how they got it, but they want to keep it hush-hush because of the sensitivity of where it is and what it is. Eventually, when Ron talked with the angels in the chamber, he was informed this is going to be instrumental in the very last days. This is going to be instrumental when a Sunday law is implemented. They're telling Ron this, right? The tablets of stone will come out, will be brought out during that time. They tell him, take a sample of the blood, the dried blood, and go get it tested. I wonder why they would do that. My two witnesses, the blood and the law, both of those evidences will come out. Particularly when the Sunday law is being agitated, you see. Ron took this blood and he asked for a recommendation, and we believe we know where he went, but when we followed up on the conversation, everybody was very tight-lipped. Nobody wanted to say anything. Because really, the blood evidence was physical evidence that validated a virgin birth. And the story is phenomenal. He went to this laboratory. I'm not even going to mention really which one it was because I don't want him to get 10,000 letters. But he took it to a laboratory. I think I know which one it was. And he was told by the angels what test to request. He was told to request a keratin test. And as a health professional himself, he realized that blood is not viable out of the body for more than a couple of weeks. And so for that particular type of test, but he goes in and he asks for the test anyway, and the lab technicians drill him. Where did you get the blood? Whose blood is it? What kind of test you want? Et cetera, et cetera. And when he tells them that it's from an archaeological dig, they just say, well, take your samples and go your way. You're wasting your money, you're wasting our time, etc. This is not going to work. And Ron says, well, look, it's my money. Please do the test. And he convinces them to do the test. And so they put it in solution, and it's got to swirl for 48 hours, and then they have to start to see if it's going to grow, and then they have to suspend the growth, and then manually count the chromosomes. And all of this takes, I guess, probably 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it is. And Ron's there filming all of this. He wants to be there to film the results and whatnot. So they come to the place where they've counted the chromosomes. And a typical person has 46, right? And the way I understand that works, you get an X and a Y from your father, you get an X from your mother, so the father is the determining sex. And those two chromosomes form into 22 pairs called autosomes. And you end up with 46. Okay? Well, this particular blood here is tested, and they've counted things over this 4 or 5 day period, and they're baffled. They're really baffled because they see the 23 X chromosomes, but they only see one Y. And so they turn to Ron and they say, "Where did you get this blood?" And by that time, Ron was a very sensitive type of person. He was kind of a big, burly guy. He's like 6'2" or 3", pretty good-sized fella. And they turned to him, and with tears in his eyes, he tells these lab techs, "This was the blood of your Messiah." Can you imagine that? The typical Jewish mindset is that, well, wait a minute, the Messiah is yet to come. And then here are these guys that deal with science, that deal with evidence, test tubes, and so forth, and they're looking at the physical evidence of the Messiah, of their Messiah. They go bananas. They start wailing and beating their chests, because now they've come to realize He's already come. There's a reason when they teach in the synagogues over there, their children, they prevent them. It's against the law to consider Daniel chapter 9 and Isaiah 53. It's like, take that out of your Bibles. We cannot look at those. Rip them out. Because they point to what evidence those lab techs ended up seeing. And when we followed up and we went to the medical clinic or medical lab, hospital there, they knew they weren't willing to say a single word. And we even contacted the fellow that made the recommendation that worked with Ron, and he didn't know us, but he didn't know that we knew him, and we knew the connection. And he told us, Ron Wyatt, that name sounds vaguely familiar. But no, he doesn't want to say anything either. They don't really know what to do. But Yahweh knew what to do, and He knew how to orchestrate all of this so that we could be saved. That humanity would have an opportunity for salvation, and still He would be able to bring His Son back to heaven with Him. And as a father, I can dimly understand how the Father felt. But it did cost. It did cost a tremendous price. Much more than most Christians understand and believe. It did cost something eternal as well as something physical. So, I can't take you down. I can take you down into Zedekiah's cave. I can show you where the tunnel entrance is, but I can't take you and show you that particular artifact. But one day, very, very, very soon, those tablets are coming out of that chamber. And that blood evidence is coming out of that chamber. And the world will stand in awe of the price that's been paid for their own salvation. And they will be pushed to receive it and accept it, or to reject it. There will be no fence sitters in the near future. To not make a decision means you have made a decision. Yes. Now we have a wonderful gift that's been given to us. An understanding and knowledge of what the Lord has done for us. I already know that everybody's not going to get it. And that's really okay. It is. It's okay. In fact, when you go into this book here, this book tells me that those that live through to the end will understand this. And those that don't, they still will end up in the kingdom. Those that are Christian will end up in the kingdom. But not everybody has to understand this. Okay? Let me show you something. In the book of Revelation, chapter 14 and chapter 15. In chapter 14, in verse 3, it says, they sang, as it were, a song, a new song before the throne. Who's they? Before the four living creatures and the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000. You're familiar with that verse. In chapter 15. I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them the wrath of God is complete. And I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who have the victory over the beast, over the image, and over his mark, and over the number in his name, standing on the sea of glass, harps, having harps of God, they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. The 144,000 know the song of Moses and the Lamb. They know the song of the law and the blood. They know the song of atonement. It's a marriage. Two becoming one together. Sealed on the place of at-one-ment. The mercy seat is called the Kaporeth, the place of at-one-ment. We're pretty stubborn. We've got really hard heads. The Spirit of God will bring this home to a group of people that will live through to the very end of time. They will grasp a greater understanding of the atonement because that's what we will need. We will have to understand. We will need something that gives us a greater appreciation and understanding of the price that was paid in our behalf. When we begin to embrace what really went on, and God asks of me anything? Is there going to be anything too hard? Too difficult? Am I going to have to, what am I going to have to sacrifice? It's nothing in compared to what He has done. He's trying to prepare us for that moment. So He's giving us all kinds of clues, all kinds of information, so that our minds will be fixed on Him and our characters will reflect His character. The Ark of the Covenant find is that piece of sacred furniture, if you will, that has initiated that process. I believe with all my heart that the development of that group, that group develops. We're going to talk about that group Sabbath afternoon. The last presentation that I give will be on the end time remnant. And I want to share some things with you about that group that perhaps you've never heard before. And I hope that each and every one of you have an opportunity to be here for that presentation. And those that are watching through the live stream, that you too might tune in for all the rest of the meetings. We still have a lot to cover yet, and yet I've really thrown a lot your way. And so I'm sympathetic. It's going to take you some time for your minds to process it all. And I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm not here to live your experience. I'm here just to inspire. I'm just an instrument, a tool. And God says, inspire them to dig deeper. Go beyond what I know. Don't walk out of here and be telling everybody what I know. Go beyond that. That's your responsibility. And I hope and pray that the Spirit of God has inspired you to that height and to that level. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Father, in the stillness of this place, we want to thank you. You have opened my understanding, and hopefully I've been able to impart that to those listening, of just the secrets of the Lord, the mystery that's been hid, that's been unnoticed for such a long time. You're going to ask of us some incredible things. You're going to ask things of us that we never in a million years would think that we're capable of. With you, all things are possible. Without you, nothing is. And so, a greater understanding of your love and your sacrifice is what we desperately need. We can never prepare ourselves for what's ahead in this world. The enemy will try to overwhelm us physically, emotionally, spiritually. He will try to crush us. You are our only defense. You are the strong tower that we run to this evening. Your grace is sufficient. Bless us with a mindset, with a perspective, with an understanding, with wisdom from on high that prepares us for the very, very near future, the events that will transpire, the persecution that will come. Let us be resolved in our heart and mind, even right now, that though the heavens fall, we will stand for you, because it is your character that's on trial. Amen. And Father, please consent to use us to vindicate that character. Fill us with an outpouring of your Spirit. We need more than we have. Please give it to us. Time is running out. Thank you that you've brought each person here. Pray, Lord, that as we leave this place, you will take us not only in safety, but your Spirit will never leave us. Guide and direct us as we continue through the rest of our series. Thank you that you're going to share even more incredible insight in your word. May we never, ever take it for granted. We praise you and we pray in the name of our mighty Yeshua. Amen. I can't see the clock, but what time? Pardon me? Okay. We do have a question here?
Yes. There was, I think it was 1 John 3 or something, one of the epistles of John, you had a text about his ministry being continual. What was, can you bring that text up again, or do you know exactly where it is?
Let me let you come up and we'll cursor back and see what